I'm Salad, mint salad, and I saw Quantum of Solace. It is directed by Mark Foster, written by Neil Purvis, Robert Wade, and Paul Haggis. If you haven't seen this movie, I will spoil it for you. This movie starts and we have Bond. He has a certain white and he's taking him to M, and then he takes him to M and they're questioning him. What's interesting is they question him and he's like, oh yeah, by the way, we have everybody in everywhere, including here. And then a guy just comes, pew, he's in the room. He's working with MI6, presumably. He's like a bodyguard, and he pew, pew, starts shooting. Pew, pew. And of course, Bond goes and chases him, follows him, and then that guy gets shot by Bond because Bond really likes to shoot people instead of try to capture them. And this seems to be a reoccurring theme in this movie, is M is very mad at Bond for keep trying to save them, but he instead shoots them. She's trying to get information. We also got Quantum is happening. And there's this guy who wants a big chunk of land in Bolivia, and he just wants that land. He's okay with everything else happening as long as he has that land. And I guess he's been damming the water. He's trying to create a monopoly, a water monopoly. He's supposed to sell the water. The thing with monopolies, though, something that I've never seen any person strive for a monopoly ever consider, is that once you have a monopoly, the pressure to sustain that monopoly is so great that then the monopoly falls. So why create a monopoly? Do people never think long term about all their plans in movies? Because it seems like they never do. Something I've noticed about the editing in this, especially with the fight scenes, there's a lot of cuts. I mean, a cut not even every 3 seconds, maybe every 1.5 seconds there's a cut, and it just looks very busy. I do like the location. It's pretty cool. I like the sandiness. I like Italy. I've never been to Italy. It looks cool. I like the different locations. I feel like in this one, the transitions between different locations, although they're prettier, in my opinion, because there's more colorful and the cinematography just looks cooler, in my opinion, it still struggles with the same issue of taking two places and transitioning them together. I feel like this movie just feels like, oh, I guess we're just gonna have a title card say we're in London now, or in Italy now, or we're in the middle of the desert now, or in Bolivia now. I personally wish there was a little bit more transition. Of course, MI6 is very interested to see why this guy is so interested in this land. Some people suspect that it's due to oil, but this guy, even knowing that there might not be oil, still takes the land. So I'm thinking maybe there's something else there. He's even kind of cagey about the deal. He's like, whatever I find there is mine. I'm like, you're expecting something there that the other people don't expect to be there. What's your plan ultimately? There's also people begging Bond to forgive Vesper. I'm like, okay, cool, I guess. I mean, you bring up Vesper, you don't really bring them up as like a person shown on screen. I feel like it's mostly shown as like a reference to the other movies. Oh, hey, this happened, well, we gotta forgive them. It's like, no, why are you putting in plots from another movie into this movie? I kind of personally want James Bond films to be very standalone. However, it seems like the James Bond movies, as they progress more into more modern times, they're becoming more sequential, more so than just standalone films you can just watch at any time. I do like Daniel Craig. He looks so different than the other James Bonds. At least the other James Bond actors, they were approximations of what they looked like. Although they acted a little bit differently, I feel like Daniel Craig, he acts the most Bondly. The weakness, the women thing, that is exaggerated in Daniel Craig's performance of Bond. It seems like any woman that he encounters, he's looking at them, he's ogling them. He's not making misogynist remarks like the other James Bonds have. It seems like James Bond regards women more so as prizes, and to have sex with them is, I want an ultimate prize, versus the other James Bonds. They looked at women as objects, but they weren't so put on a pedestal like James Bond, this version of James Bond does. Compared to the other James Bonds, Daniel Craig is a little bit of a simp type, is how I'd best describe him. We also got a chick who's involved. She eventually comes on to assist James Bond, and she's doing this for vengeance, her own personal vengeance. These guys, they mess with her family, cause their family to break apart and die, and not good. No good things happened. So she's like, I'm gonna get him. So basically, It's her plus James Bond. They stop this guy from taking all this land in Bolivia and having a water monopoly, so he dies, but in the coolest way possible. James Bond takes this guy, puts him in the middle of the desert, gives him some motor oil, and then he goes, I bet it'll take 20 miles before you consider drinking that. And then he just leaves. He just lets that guy just walk in the middle of the desert. That's wild. And then he dies. And then we have M's there. I feel like in this film, there's a lot more involvement of MI6 than there has been in previous James Bond films. There's more of James Bond reporting back. And then we also have, in this one, since James Bond is so insistent on following this guy, and M's like, hey, bring back James Bond. James Bond does not come back. She has to turn off all of his access to money, access to anything, passports, whatever. She turns all of that off. And there's this chick who comes and tries to retrieve him. And then she's pretty much with James Bond until she ends up dying in a bunch of oil. And she drowns in oil because of the guy who's, I guess, looking for oil, but he says he doesn't actually have any interest in looking for oil. That guy drowns her in oil. There's a lot more consequences. It seems like that James Bond, his leash is now to the very edge that I can give, and then James Bond's still fighting against that leash. And so we got M and Bond are in a constant power control. For one hand, we got James Bond, he's doing what he thinks is right, what's going to progress this mission, and then we got orders from higher up that's in opposition to him at sometimes. The action is fun, but it's too choppy for my liking, and I feel like it's a little bit too long for how long the plot is. I do appreciate the little sit-in moments. I like that, but then it's just like, oh cool, we have more action scenes that I feel like go on for just a little too long, not gonna lie. The only lady that James Bond sleeps with is the Fields chick, the one that goes to retrieve him. I like it. She knows all about James Bond, what he's up to, and still it works on her. And that's pretty much it. He's only focused on the mission, and he's not really interested in the other women. He does flirt with a couple other women, but he's mostly focused on Fields. What do you think of Quantum of Solace? I thought it was alright. It was enjoyable. Oh, I forgot to mention, I was listening to the Quantum of Solace theme song. I was like, wow, this is a return to the greats. This is up there with Live and Let Die and Diamonds Are Forever. We got the Quantum of Solace song. It's not as good as Live and Let Die and Diamonds Are Forever, but it's pretty up there, so I like this theme song. I gotta give this movie, it's a solid 6.6 out of 10. If you like this review, watch another one on the platform who likes that. $20 Dinos, patreon.com/ASEPresents. One movie review for 1 month. Go to Linktree to support the daily grindiness of all other daily movies. So go here. And until next time, Mint Salad Saw, I'll see you later, my sound cretons and bacon bits.